Oh, I can hear the "you're out of content" comments already, but hear me out, everyone. Similar to how ice is one of the most versatile resources out there, rot could very well be included in that conversation. From easy mass production that can begin easily, day one for Pete's sake, to essential crafts that everyone will end up using at some point, rot is truly nothing to ignore. But where does it actually come from? Well, for the sake of keeping things as nice and simple as possible, let us just say that when most food items spoil, rot is gonna follow. And we can actually see the rotting process from within our own inventories, as things that will rot have a meter indicating the level of perishment that they are at. Green being very good, obviously. Yellow meaning that such foods are gonna start to see loss of effectiveness, and red telling us that we really shouldn't even bother for the most part, unless you're WX78, of course. However, one last thing before we talk about the best sources of rot itself. Of course, all perishable items will actually rot at different times. However, eggs here will be the only food items to not only not rot in the rot, they will turn in the rotten eggs instead. So, there you go. However, if we want lots of rot, then we should probably know how to go about getting as much as we can as early as day one, or at least planning for it. For you see, while we are being nomadic in our first few days of a new world, we can perhaps choose to pick flowers along our travels for petals, perishable items that actually rot in but 6 days. So just go about your business, and by the time you're ready to finally settle down in base and fertilize your resources in said base, you'll be off to the races. Oh, and don't worry about renewability of flowers either. Rain, world regrowth, bees, and player intervention all provide additional flowers all year round. Trust me. But if you're still a stickler for that sort of thing for whatever reason, know that option number 2 is and will always be light bulbs. Head down to do some spelunking in the caves in hopes of locating the light flower biome somewhere in the wilds. But still just to simply pick any light flowers you see, as light bulbs not only also spoil in but 6 days' time, the light flowers themselves sometimes offer 2 to 3 light bulbs each, which means a potential stack or 2 or 3 of rot very, very early. Both petals and light bulbs are great for getting stacks of rot, but there are other options actually. Raw berries will spoil in 6 days again, while cooked berries drop that to 3 days only. However, juicy berries actually take the cake at 2 days and 1 day respectively. Plus, juicy berry bushes also happen to provide more berries per harvest to boot, which is very, very nice. Next could very well be the Merm King if you've got one in the world. For you see, trading with them, as any character, has a chance to see 1 to 4 things of rot per trade, which is quite good, and very fast if you work up to it, of course. Plus, the extra loot that isn't actually rot will make it worth it regardless, in my opinion. Letting fish meat spoil will lead to, well, spoiled fish meat. And for bigger catches, that's going to be spoiled fish, while smaller fish will spoil into a spoiled fish morsel. It's a whole bloody thing. But both produce rot. However, it's not actually guaranteed. 50% for spoiled fish and 75% for spoiled fish morsel, mind you. And lastly, and probably forgettably if I'm honest, mushroom planters in winter, merm heads at any bloody time, and disease plants at also any bloody time will all drop rot. When you leave them too long without a harvest, you smash them, you dig them up, you get the picture. But these are certainly the least likely of sources, so you really shouldn't bother. But come on, Beard. Seriously, rot, is it that important? Yes, friend, it could be, because all of them sources of it can lead to a much easier life for us in the early days of this game. poop free practically. For you see, rot is the equivalent of manure or any other fertilizer when it comes to refertilizing transplanted, withered, or even dead resources like berry bushes, grass tufts, and stone fruit bushes themselves. So if you do plan ahead in the early days of a world, you can have all of your resources transplanted and fertilized in but days. More than enough time to make great use of them. But that's not all rot can do for us. For you see, it is also needed for Wormwood's compost wrap, a craft that will help restore 30 health per use at a pretty darn cheap cost to boot. Plus, it is equivalent to using 6 manures in the fertilization process, which only means that you should be using them on farm crops alone. Booster shots also require rot, and following a Telltale and/or Portal Revive method, you're probably going to be needing them, as they help return our lost maximum health to its full glory. So yes, rot is also very, very essential. Rot also goes into crafting mushroom planters, things that a single mushroom can be planted into in order to produce a total of 4 in but 3.5 days or so. Absolutely incredible, and some of my favorite things in the entire game. And lastly, Wirt and her marsh turf craft will require some rot too. However, one can always just pitchfork some, so I wouldn't bother too much with this one. The point of all this is, rot is just way better than you might think, goes into way more than you might believe, and is certainly way more efficient than gathering manure each and every time you need to fertilize. But few last notes here. Bees can be kept alive in our inventories through feeding them rot, which is pretty fun and pretty neat, I guess. You should be sure to note that food left on the ground will actually spoil far faster for you. So, use that to your advantage tremendously. And finally, that some mobs, most notably pigmen, are actually willing to eat rot, so any left on the ground could very well be used as bait. However, it really wouldn't be my first choice, especially now, since the game just seemingly stacks similar items together off screen, which can obviously ruin bait pens. And there you have it, everyone. Rot in Don't Starve Together. It is important in more ways than one, yes. However, the biggest takeaway should be how efficient it will be in keeping things fertilized from the very first moment you plant them to far into the late game when rot is just falling out of your ears. It's pretty great. Just not very great at refertilizing farms, mind you, but it can still be done regardless. Poop is good. Rot may be better. But thanks for watching, folks. Well wishes to all. Rock that rot, and I'll see ya in the next one. Bye-bye.